Hi, you are in the ladies' room with Dr. Donica, the only public ladies' room you can enter anytime without ever waiting online. I'm your host, Dr. Donica Moore. We'll be having real conversations with real women about really intimate issues. They may be embarrassing, sad, or funny, but they will always be interesting and informative. You know, like the best conversations you've had in ladies' rooms with your best friends, or total strangers and a physician. Please join us. Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of In the Ladies' Room. Today, I'm having flashbacks because we're discussing a topic most people haven't even heard of, with a guest just about everyone has heard of, the legendary comedic actress Vicki Lawrence. And she was actually my second guest ever on this podcast 2.5 years ago in episode number 2. And now we're up to episode number 132. So I'm so excited. Anyway, the topic is chronic idiopathic urticaria. And most people respond to that by saying chronic what? So let's just break it down. Urticaria is the medical term for hives, which are red, itchy bumps that can appear anywhere on the body. Idiopathic means that we have no medical explanation for what causes it or what triggers an outbreak. Or as one of my medical school professors used to say, I'm an idiot and I don't know the pathology. We all know what chronic means, but in this context, it's defined as lasting for at least 6 weeks. But in many cases, it can last for months or even years. And not only is it difficult to diagnose and a mouthful to say, it's also known by its acronym CIU. Now, introducing our guest is a lot easier. Vicki Lawrence is best known for her iconic characters on Mama's Family and the Burnett show, which celebrated its 50th anniversary, I guess, about 2 years ago. Recently, she's back on TV, co-starring in a comedy called The Cool Kids on Fox. She's also a veteran of media tours as an actress and comedian. So when I heard that she'd been using her voice to share her personal experiences with chronic idiopathic urticaria, or CIU, I knew she was a perfect guest to come back in the ladies' room. Vicki's partnering with the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America on their National Education and Awareness program called CIU You, which is generously supported by Novartis Pharmaceuticals and Genentech. Now, while you may not have heard of CIU before, it does affect about 1.5 million people in the United States who often feel isolated, frustrated, and literally uncomfortable in their own skin. People who suffer from this condition are often embarrassed by unpredictable outbreaks. And that, of course, makes it a perfect topic for In the Ladies' Room, where we talk about lots of embarrassing things. So without further rambling, it's my pleasure to introduce Miss Vicki Lawrence. You are in the Ladies' Room.
It looks nice. I like the paint. Who was your first guest ever?
My first guest was a young woman named Sarah Gaines, who was what we call a fitfluencer. A fitfluencer, somebody who talks about athletics and aerobics and fitness. And she started an organization called Fit University across college campuses. And I know you're not going to believe this, but she was fat shamed. So because she's all of 5 feet tall and 100 pounds dripping wet. So we talked about fat shaming. And I know you've never heard of that in your business. That's not a thing for actors, is it?
Yeah, probably. Oh, yeah. I was always too heavy on the Carol Burnett show. Always lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. Always.
Imagine how successful your career would have been.
If I lost weight?
We always do that to ourselves. You know, we're always putting ourselves down for if only I shoulda, coulda, woulda. Before we get into the topic today, though, you know, obviously we're in the midst of a global pandemic right now. So I just want to ask, how are you and your family doing, you know, during this time?
We're probably the same as everybody else. We're hanging in there. We haven't killed each other yet.
All right. So how are you eating your anxieties?
Say again?
I said, how are you eating your anxieties?
Oh, I know. Seriously. Oh, gosh. It's terrible. I'm cooking way too much. Yeah.
I only was cooking way too much. That wouldn't be so terrible. It's the eating way too much of what I'm cooking. Somebody told me it's called a pandemic because we're eating like pandas who eat nonstop for 12 hours a day.
Oh, I've heard that we've all gained the COVID-19.
Yes. We actually did an episode called the COVID-19. So all the college freshmen who didn't get to go to college, instead of gaining the college 15, are on the college 19, on the COVID-19 path.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
despite all the jokes, obviously we take this very seriously, and our hearts go out to, all the families who've been affected by it. And of course, the pandemic is very isolating, which is something that people have in common with the people who suffer from CIU. So tell us, I gave a little bit of information about the condition in the intro, but tell us what
Uh-huh.
your experience was.
I woke up one morning. Excuse me. It's been it's been a lot of years now, 10 maybe. Anyway, the palms of my hands were itching. And my husband was already downstairs watching the news. So I went down. I said, "You need to buy a lottery ticket tonight because clearly we are coming in a lot of my hands like mad." And we laughed about it, but the itching didn't go away. So I went in the kitchen and I thought, what are you going to do for this? I thought, okay, number one thing you do for an allergy is you get into the ice. So I did ice water, stuck my hands in the water, itching went away. Didn't think anything more about it until I was out walking the dogs a little bit later. And then it started all over. It started on my abdomen and around my back and on my thighs and on my butt. And I itched my way home with the dogs and said, "You guys, whatever it is, do it quick. Mom is dying." And I ran to the house. I ran by Al into the restroom. I pulled my shirt up and it was welts, big red raised welts everywhere that I had scratched. And he said, "What is going on, sweetie?" And I said, "I don't know, but I want to go jump in that cold bay. It sounds so good." And I was like that for probably another day before Al said, the next day, same thing, woke up with the hands itching, which is the weirdest thing. That's how it started. And then it would just escalate as the day went on. Al said, "You got to go see the allergist." We had a really good allergist where we still do, actually. He's still with us. He's gotten us through all the kids and all the traumas. And I went to see him and he said, most people break out in hives at some point in their lives. We're not going to worry about what it is. We'll take care of it. It'll be gone in 10 days, not to worry. Well, 10 days turned into 2 weeks, turned into 6 weeks. And I became really proficient at taking cold showers. Getting in the shower, lukewarm, turn it down until you just can't stand it anymore and you're just screaming. Get out, slather yourself with menthol lotion, sit on the side of the bed and just pray that you fall asleep for a while and that the hives calm down for a little bit.
Were you taking any over-the-counter antihistamines or allergy pills or anything like that?
For 6 weeks, tried everything you can think of that you would do for an allergy, be it over-the-counter, everything he had that he could throw at me, everything. And at the end of 6 weeks, after having done everything you can think of, he said, I walked in one day, he looked at me, he said, "You looked at the hives." He said, I think I need to diagnose you with chronic idiopathic urticaria." And I was like, what now? What mouthful have I ever heard of? Chronic idiopathic urticaria? So he explained it to me. Chronic, it's now lasted more than 6 weeks. Idiopathic, I can't tell you why. He said the same thing your doctor said. Think of idiot, the root word there. Great. And urticaria, he said, doctors have to have a fancy word for everything. That's urticaria is a fancy word for hives. And I said, so now what? I went home, I looked it up on the internet. I could find no good information. I found a few chat rooms, people that were, saying, "Oh my God, has this happened to you?" And "Oh my God," or "What, are you going crazy?" But no good information. I was fortunate that he was familiar with CIU.
Mm-hmm.
So we were able to put a treatment plan together for me that worked beautifully, and knock wood, I have not seen a hive in a lot of years. But for me, it is chronic, so it actually did recur a couple of times way back when. But we got it back under control, and it's not curable, but it's treatable. Mm-hmm. So and we are up to 1.6 million of us now.
Oh my.
Our numbers are growing. 1.6 million of us in the United States that have CIU. Anyway, as you said, I was fortunate to join with the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America and work on this beautiful website that they put together called CIUandYou.com, supported by Genentech and Novartis. And it's just a great website, and it's been really updated a lot since I talked to you last. There's, you got my story on there, but there are a lot of other stories. We did a chat group, and I got to talk to a lot of other patients. You can now link to a virtual doctor to discuss your symptoms.
Oh,
There's
wow. That's great during a pandemic.
great information on there. It will encourage you to take pictures and track the hives so that when you do get with that doctor, you really know what you're talking about.
Right, because my understanding is that most people who get this go from doctor to doctor. I call that doctor shopping. And, they can take several months or longer to get to a proper diagnosis.
I talked to a gal that went 2 years and saw 26 doctors before she got the
Wow.
correct. Oh, I know.
Did she tally up how much that cost?
She did, but I mean, I think my advice would be to ask the doctor, is he familiar with CIU? And if he's not, say thank you very much and hang up.
Right.
Go to the
However,
next.
most people don't know what their diagnosis is.
Yes.
They're obviously going to a doctor to deal with this terrible problem that's uncomfortable and unsightly and scary and frustrating.
And I think that too is when you break out in hives, your automatic reaction is, I've eaten something wrong, I've changed my detergent, I've done something stupid.
Right.
And we all, myself included, blame ourselves. I mean, my daughter was saying, you need to do an elimination diet, Mom. I haven't changed anything at all. I haven't eaten anything weird. I'm on the same diet I've always been on. One of our friends said it's the tannins in the red wine. You got to stop drinking that. If you're going to drink red wine, Vicki, at least do the French. They don't do the tannins. Oh my God. Everybody wants to help.
Everybody's an expert.
Everybody's an expert.
And how many people told you weren't taking enough vitamin C or you weren't taking enough vitamin whatever?
Everybody's got an answer. Oh, or they'll just say, oh, for heaven's sakes, it's hives. Over for dinner, for crying out loud.
And you said, no shit. You said, my mirror's not broken. So anyway, so this is really great that you've teamed up to share your experience and use your voice and use your experience to help other people. I love hearing your stories about what people you've met who've had the condition, not the people who you've met who have free medical advice for you.
Right.
We always say free medical advice is worth what you're paying for it. But I'd love to hear some of your...
It's a reason they call it practicing medicine.
Yes. It's an art, not a science. But, we do really focus on science. And of course, there's a lot of research now that has gone into this condition. But tell us some of the more dramatic stories you've heard from people, especially from women you've encountered, because this is more common in women than in men.
It is twice as common in women, but men do get it. And when you talk to them, it's every bit as frustrating for them as it is for us. I talked to a gal who loved her horses and loved horseback riding and gave it up because she was sure that was it. Another gal who moved out of her house, made the whole family move because she was sure it was something in the house. That could be rather expensive.
Yeah.
I met a woman who had this huge binder of everything that she had been through, the pictures and the hopeful diagnosis and everything. And she started crying when she saw my video because she said, I wish that I had had this available to me when I was looking for an answer.
And that's the thing, I think, that's probably even more stressful than the hives themselves is the anxiety and the fear and just not knowing what's causing this.
Not knowing.
A lot of people, of course, it prevents them from sleeping. It prevents them from wearing some of their favorite clothing. It prevents them from doing some of their, favorite activities. And, you know, the skin is the largest organ in the body, but we take it for granted. You know, for the most part, most of us aren't thinking about our skin 24/7 unless we have some horrible condition, whether it's CIU or poison ivy, which is how I relate to it, because I used to get poison ivy once a year. On the first nice day of spring, I would get possessed to go start weeding, and I would get poison ivy, and then I would remember I had gardeners to do that. So every year I would get poison ivy once till I finally learned what caused poison ivy.
I remember at the time thinking, I wonder if my skin will ever look normal again. You know, because you get these bumps, and the minute you itch them, they just start growing. And my favorite I'm itching just thinking about this. I am.
The worst is when I interview guests about incontinence problems, because then I always feel like I have to race to the ladies' room.
I remember my favorite weapon was my wire hairbrush for itching. And then, of course, they grow and they merge and they turn into continents. And it's just, I often would look at it and just say, I wonder if I'll ever look normal again.
So once your doctor recommended a treatment plan for you, once you identified what the problem was, how long did it take to get under control?
Oh gosh. I think it was fairly quickly.
Fairly quickly, like days or weeks or?
Days. I want to say days. It was fairly quickly.
Okay. So yeah, that's
good. And
then,
I don't know if last time we talked, but the trick is to find the allergist in your community that is familiar with CIU. I mean, that's the doc that's going to be able to help you get through this.
And you were lucky that you had a relationship with an allergist. Did you have pre-existing allergies?
Well, you know, like hay fever, and the kids would get things or whatever. So over the years, he was the allergist that was recommended to us in our community when we moved here. So he was our guy. He was our go-to allergist when we needed somebody. And it was just luck of the draw that he happened to be familiar with CIU.
Yeah, the other thing is a lot of people are reluctant to see allergists, especially people my age, because they remember what going to an allergist meant when they were teenagers and had allergies, and there were pinprick tests all over your body and you know, shots and all of these things. They don't do that anymore. It's totally changed. And there's a blood test that you can get that can test for a whole panel of allergies. Even my allergist mentioned to me, I have an allergy to cats, but I had mentioned that we were thinking of getting a dog. And she said, before you get the dog, come in and I can actually test you to see if there are any specific breeds of dogs that you potentially could be allergic to. So I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, because I remember the pinprick test. I did that when I was really young, in my 20s, and just found out that I was allergic to just about every tree that blooms in Southern California.
And so you're still living in Southern California.
And I mentioned that to him. I said, do I need to get tested again? He said, no, there's no point. He said, almost everybody has an issue with hives at some point. He said, we'll get it under control. But it was 6 weeks of doing everything.
Wow. Well, that's great. So tell us about the CIU You program.
The website?
The website, and I understand you're doing media tours and you're talking about it. And
yes, here I am.
Well, I'm glad this was your first stop today.
Out speaking about it and spreading the word for people so that, I mean, I'm the face of hives. I am the...
How many people can say that?
Hopefully not too many.
1.6 million.
To be. I hope, you know, that just people will see my face or hear my story. And I mean, I can't even tell you how many times we've been in a studio and the stage manager will throw his headset off at the end of the interview and say, oh my God, I got to go call my sister. I think this is her. There are a lot of people out there that are looking. And I hope now when you Google CIU, I know now or chronic idiopathic urticaria, or even urticaria. We pop up pretty quickly now. And
Well, and
it's,
now there's a World Urticaria Day on October 1st.
who knew?
Who that
I
that's a
never
new thing.
hang. Yeah, just a nice day to spread awareness,
Yeah.
you know?
And and it's nice to be talking about something that's not a global disaster. What are your top tips, aside from obviously telling people that if you have this, see an allergist? I would think most people would go to a dermatologist, and I hope most dermatologists are up on this also. But what are your other tips for people who might be suffering from this?
Probably, number one tip is going to be to get on that website and listen to my story and listen to other people's story and remain calm and realize that you're not alone. There are a whole bunch of us, 1.6 million of us, that are going through the same thing. And realize that for us, there is no trigger. There is no, oh my God, what did I eat last night? What have I changed? Don't blame yourself necessarily. I mean, that's going to be your first inclination, is going to look for something that you have done wrong, to try to blame yourself. But if you have CIU, there's no known trigger for these hives. They can just kind of come and go as they please. So you're
And
going
is
to
there any
want,
kind of family history?
not that I know of. I've never heard of that.
Me either, because
Never
it's
heard of.
idiopathic.
Oh, and that would be family
We
history
don't
would fall,
know.
right? Yeah, no.
Mhm.
So I think don't blame yourself. Get to the right allergist. Remain calm. Just know that it's not your fault and that you're not the only one. So, I mean, that's the great thing about the website. You can listen to other people's stories and maybe see if any of it rings a bell. And
Yeah, and I think what's also very comforting or reassuring for people to hear is that there are treatment options available
yeah,
beyond all of the things that you've tried,
normal.
at your local drugstore, and all the homeopathic remedies and all the remedies that all your friends and relatives have recommended. So
Right,
I think that's a really empowering message for people, that there is help available. And
right.
certainly, this is not a condition that takes your life, but it's a condition that takes away a great part of your quality of life.
Yes, for sure.
So,
Yeah.
and of course, I think one of the things we're always worried about as patients is not just, is this my fault, or is there something I did? But I think a lot of people also worry, especially a lot of women, like, I think I'm crazy. Is this, or am I causing this by stress?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But in fact, it sounds like the condition causes more stress than.
It's can. That's for sure. It's a very frustrating.
So anyway, is there anything else you want to tell me about this other than telling people the website again?
Uh, no, I can't think of anything else. I want them to get on the website. We've updated it a lot, as I said. There's a lot of great information on there. Take pictures. Be sure you take pictures when it's flaring, because it doesn't flare all the time.
Right.
Uh,
Especially when you go to the doctor.
yeah, it's like a car when you go to the mechanic, for sure. Take pictures, which is the lovely thing that we can do now with our phones. Because for a doctor, and I mean, we're all learning this now for sure, that a picture can be worth 1,000 words, for
Right. And
sure.
especially with telemedicine, which
Yeah,
we sort of all rediscovered with the
that's
pandemic.
our website too, that you can connect virtually with an allergist and discuss your symptoms. So you're going to want some pictures as well if
That's
you're flaring on that day.
Yeah, absolutely.
People,
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Before I let you go, I want to share with our audience that when I spoke with you 2.5 years ago, I was suddenly possessed with this idea, because I get random ideas, to ask you what your most unusual experience ever was in a ladies' room. And I want you to know that your story was so great. I now ask every single guest on our
oh,
show that question. And not only that, I've been contacted by a book agent who told me she listens to all my podcast episodes. And she said a great book idea that she would love to pitch is a book of all my stories about women's experiences in the ladies' room.
oh,
So, and my first episode was about my experiences in ladies' rooms, which is why I chose the name for this podcast. But you told this great story that I would love you to share again about your most interesting and memorable experience that you ever had in a ladies' room.
Well, it's certainly one of them. Though interesting stuff happens in the ladies' room. We were in Hawaii, where we had a condo for a while, and we went over to the hotel where Carol was staying.
And Carol's Carol Burnett.
Carol Burnett, and she attracts fans. You know, they hear her voice, they know she's there. Anyway, we got up to use the ladies' room, and people followed us in. And I was in one stall, and she was in the stall next to me, and people were going, "Oh my God, Carol Burnett, could you please sign this?" And they were handing like paper towels under the stall and the pen and everything. So there she sits signing her autograph, and then she'd pass it over to my stall and say, "Here, sign this, Vic." And then I'd hand it back out, and we signed a lot of autographs sitting there in the ladies' room.
How'd you finally get out?
Well, I think we probably signed everybody's autograph. I know, take care of business and come out of there, for heaven's sake.
So, truth be told, you played Carol Burnett's sidekick in many different ways. Sometimes you played her mother, sometimes you played, other roles. Were you ever tempted when somebody stopped you on the street to sign her autograph? Did anybody ever confuse you?
No. I had people for a lot of years would say, "Oh my God, Carol Lawrence." Carol Burnett and Vicki Lawrence all mushed together. So I had that happen a lot.
I actually once spoke with Oprah, who said that people would come up to her on the street when her hair wasn't done and makeup wasn't done, and they would say, "Oh, you look a lot like Oprah." And she would say, "Yeah, people tell me that all the time."
Oh, they didn't know her voice. Now, come on. I voice all the time. Even now, I'll be in a baseball hat and a mask, and people will go, "Oh no, we heard your voice and we knew," or "We heard your laugh."
The laugh is very characteristic. Well, keep on laughing, and please keep on educating people. You're doing great work. Thank you so much for coming back to talk with us in the ladies' room again. And you are welcome anytime.
All right. Thank you. Good to see you.
Take care.
That's all we have time for today. But let's keep the conversation going on Twitter or Facebook at Dr. Donica. And please join us next week for another episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Real conversations with real women about really intimate topics.